I'm glad, you know, I'm sorry, NeiruMah, I'm going to take the sunshine off of you real quick. Aquarius!
Hell yeah.
You mentioned the Osiris. It was one of the first things that you mentioned during picks and bans, and it came through. Osiris was at the top of the player damage towards the end of the game, 21,000 damage. Sure, some of that is a little bit fake, quote-unquote, soloing damage, but number 2 is Skeeledon at 14k. I don't think 7,000 is poke. Talk to me a little bit about what you liked out of the rookie Aquarius.
So you're saying you're happy to see Kiki back in his solo lane doing good things. I'm happy to see my boy Aquarius on the Osiris doing exactly what he wanted to do. He was 303 in the prime of his game, doing a lot of damage, leading the engagements, baiting out really good engages, also in the solo lane side. Just doing a great job overall, and even when his team was getting picked when the Sylvanus would die early in the fight, he was always still in the backline and disrupting everything, trying his best to kill the opposition.
He even got to a point where he was able to really zone away Kiki from one archer, and he did so much damage at that point. Like, it's a trade-off of like, do I want to get this 18 gold that's right outside my tower, or do I want to take 400 to 500 damage poke?
And what's most impressive to me is that Aquarius is, at least for game number 1, the hard carry on his squad, surrounded by veterans like Incon and Shadowq. He's the rookie. It's one of his first times at LAN, and he's playing like this.
Yeah, that ultimate also from Shadowq in this engagement, hitting 3 members, made it so easy for Flashpoint to get off to a nice little early lead because they got the Gold Fury immediately after that, but just couldn't really win the team fights once the Vamana came online, I feel like.
Yeah, I mean, Aquarius just out here playing like not just one player, but three just incredible control. And unfortunately for his team, unable to take the win, but still able to do incredible stuff. Whether it's the Osiris or not, I need to see Aquarius on a character that can be just as aggressive and control a situation just like he did here in game number 1. If he doesn't get the Osiris, Dimmy, where do you want to see Aquarius lean?
Yeah, I'm really curious what he's going to do this game. Obviously, I know from personal experience, you go with the aggressive variant in the first game and you realize, okay, I'm winning the early game, but after that, it's just not happening.
Sure.
So what I want to see is maybe a different god. I know he likes to play Tyr, maybe take it a bit slower. Tyr can still win the laning phase, and after that, try to control the team fight, maybe peel for the Artemis.
Of course, you're the one that's going to bring up the Tyr, right?
He plays it too. That's what I mentioned.
I don't think it's necessarily Aquarius needing to change his picks. I think it might be other options needing to be switching their roles. I think specifically going out of Xenotronics, maybe picking a safer god in that duel lane. Because of all the pressure that Flashpoint had in that solo lane, favoring Aquarius, he was fine to play the Osiris, but you can't leave Artemis alone.
Well, with the best of 3 scenario, I don't mind that's why I wasn't so angry about the Artemis pick. You've got another game to really come out, and the Artemis is one of those characters that, you know what, if the dice wind up 5 or 6, you're just going to win late games, so we'll see how that works out. Well, real party monkey. Nobody really wants to play with the monkey.
That's how OP Humbats is. You just got to ban him twice just to make sure neither team get him, but either way, though.
To be fair, the Fear No Evil and the Tremors kind of work the same at level 1, so Khepri going to be banned out next to Chang'e. Zeus, again, looking directly, so it's interesting. Zeus is just strong, period, but it also happens to be Incon's #1 god. So
do you think that's why they banned it out?
I think he's just strong, but also Incon. It's kind of double action there, but Skadi, too hottie, the selection for the Hunter. Oxygen Supremacy actually might wind up in the mid lane. Little bit of flexibility there. How do you feel about mid Skadi still?
I don't really like it that much. I think she's perfectly fine in the Hunter role. Mid lane kind of a bit of a waste, but that's just me.
Especially when you're going to have aggression in that soul lane, and then you have a 1v1 matchup in the dual lane. Skadi can definitely control it with that ultimate and the Kaldir.
Well, Susano is going to provide a little bit of the peel that we didn't have earlier on the side of, well, on the side of Flashpoint. Now it's going to be on Oxygen. But the Osiris is taken by Flashpoint, so Aquarius won't be able to play the Broken God. Between Osiris and Thor, I think already you have a little bit more peel on the side of Flashpoint, whether it be for a mid laner or a Hunter that winds up in trouble. Last pick of the first half, going to Flashpoint, and they'll opt for the Khepri. So should somebody die, Khepri's going to help him out.
I like this idea also to go Thor right off the bat before these secondary bans come out, because the Awilish didn't really work out for Mirage. He was using his ultimate too early in team fights before the purification beads were already used, trying to synergize off of the Wrath of Terrors from Shadowq. Unfortunately, a lot of situations, Skeeledon was just able to beat and avoid both of those ultimates and then just jump into safety.
So the Morgan was also banned last game, and we didn't touch upon it. This is a complicated character, very intricate, and has more to do with the rest of the draft than herself most of the time. Dimmy, even independent, just what are your feelings on this new character, the Morgan?
I think she has a great potential in a good player's hands. I do respect the ban on the LAN environment. She does add a little bit confusion to team fights where you're saying, all right, Susano ult down, and then there's another one standing right behind you. And it just messes up the cons a bit. I like the ban.
So Poseidon also going to be banned out. Oxygen Supremacy, despite the build coming out from Incon, thought that Poseidon was a little bit too much. Well, he's going to flex right there. We'll see if he can flex in game number 2. His selection still not chosen yet. One more ban for either team. A Flashpoint on the hot seat right now. What would you like to see banned out here?
Trying to focus out mid here, potentially. Trying to get people off of their comfort picks. Now, Izanami is still available, and this is something that also Incon could potentially play. It could be an option if you're trying to focus ban him out.
Terra and Isis will be the bans coming out from Flashpoint and Oxygen Supremacy, respectively. One choice for FP here on the right-hand side, likely to be either a Hunter or a mid lane. Thor and Osiris Khepri, pretty standard as far as where they're going to wind up. Jungle, support, and solo. So we'll see where they head, and it will be that mid lane Ra.
Yeah, I was about to question what Incon is going to play here. I think Zeus, Poseidon are more staple guards. We've all seen him on Isis. I think he had a really great game on Soul the other day. Ra, it's a question if he has to set up for this. The Thor dunk should be very good for that, and they can maybe just light up the Sylvanus.
And you don't necessarily need the dunks to always set up the Ra. You have that long-range tectonic rift to be able to set up both the 1 and the 4 from Ra.
And not just that, you've got Khepri over there. That abduct lasts forever. A good Ra can just line that up nice and easy. So a lot of setup for Flashpoint's mid lane.
And what's really nice transition between game 1 and 2 for Flashpoint is the fact that they didn't have much peel and control the last game between only Osiris and Sylvanus, but now with this Thor Khepri, there's more protection for Ra and Incon to be able to just throw out any sort of damage that he wants.
Well, 2 selections as the option is over on Oxygen Supremacy's side. They need a mid laner, and they likely need a solo, unless Susano's going to do something funky. And it's going to be the Thoth. The big artillery man from the back line will be selected. That's Ra's cousin. And Sobek lurking in the waters over here. Nice selection here for the solo lane, most likely. I don't think we're going to see solo Sylvanus just yet.
This Sobek I like better than the Vamana. With Vamana, he lost the laning phase, and, well, he was still tanking team fights and could bait a lot. With the Sobek, you will lose the laning phase as well, but you can actually do a lot more in the team fights, peeling for your carries and also plucking people. And
you can also stay in that laning phase a little longer using your ultimate to get back that mana. And then we also saw earlier on how he went for the health chalice instead of the mana chalice, expecting to lose his blue buff anyway. So now he might not have to go any kind of chalices and have a safer laning phase.
Not to mention the anti-heal is going to help against the Ra. I like that situation. Ram, the hunter of choice. Flashpoint versus Oxygen Supremacy. Game number 1 went over to the challengers. Can they take it in 2? We'll find out. It's Aggro and Taco on the horn.
Game 2 almost ready to go here between Oxygen Supremacy and Flashpoint. Remember, this is not the current patch that you just got this week. Skadi is not nerfed right now. That Caldier still going to be invincible during that ultimate.
Which is, you know, incredibly terrifying, as is. Skadi's not exactly a hunter you want to try and take up a 1v1 with. And considering that Xenotronics opted for the Rom here, I like the pick, considering that that's a pretty standard lane matchup as far as hunters are concerned.
Sure.
But you have to also notice that Skadi and Rom, it's not necessarily a matchup that Rom wins.
No, I mean, it's really just about buying time for the rest of the team to get there. Whenever Skadi full commits to the Rom, you can kind of go up in that ultimate, hang out, and just wait for the rest of the team. And with the global ultimate coming out of Mirage on Thor, that could absolutely buy enough time for Skadi to get focused down. That's what I want. That's what I want to see out of Flashpoint this time. I trust Aquarius to dominate that solo side without any additional help. He's Osiris up against a Guardian. He's going to have pressure in that lane pretty much regardless. We saw how much success Oxygen had up against Xenotronics, focusing him down in that duo lane. Let's see if Flashpoint can try and do the same this time around.
My biggest concern for Flashpoint, though, is outside of the Osiris and Thor, the early game potential is a little bit harder to obtain in comparison to their last draft. And then you also have to consider, I feel as though Oxygen Supremacy have the one-up over Flashpoint in terms of burst damage.
Absolutely. I mean, Thoth is near the top of the list in terms of burst damage, Final Judgment, just an insanely damaging ability. And then Skeeledon can put out plenty of burst on this Susano. And this is one of the picks that I was really surprised to see, Taco. And not that Susano was selected, because I think he's an unbelievable assassin, but that Mirage himself didn't take it away. Mirage on Susano, I think, is one of his most potent gods, but instead he goes for the Thor pretty early on in the draft. pretty early on in the mid lane. Aquarius hanging out underneath those backside Harpies, but there's a ward there, and he's spotted out immediately. NeiruMah and Venenu knew exactly where the solo laner was. Good ward coverage helps them out.
I mean, we've seen it plenty of times before in that mid lane where the solo laner will try to sneak around to look for an early gank first blood. And this time around, excellent warding, like you mentioned, from Oxygen Supremacy, just going to deter that entirely.
Oh, here's the grouping. NeiruMah and Venenu on the way to this left-hand side. Double root there out of NeiruMah, forces the purification beads from Xenotronics. Skeeledon and Oxygen Supremacy taking a page out of Soar's book. We see a lot of homie face sticking around on this left side and kind of dual laning with Vedium. This time it's Skeeledon in this dual lane with DayToRemeber. What does this bring to the table for Oxygen?
I like the option here for Skeely to just tank out. Oh, that is that's an unfortunate one.
Well, what Xenotronics did to Oxygen Supremacy in Game 1, Skeeledon returns in Game 2, uses Purification Beads to steal a purple buff away. Skeeledon happy to take the red buff since his speed is already gone on that right-hand side. Kiki, again, playing this Guardian Sobek, not going to have pressure in that lane, and maybe that's why we see Skeeledon on this left side.
And that's exactly what I was just about to mention before that engagement took place, was that Skeeledon recognizes, I have a Sobek in my solo lane. That's not going to outmatch Aquarius and Mirage on that Osiris and Thor, so he might as well forfeit that side of the map and just try and secure as much farm as possible in the mid and dual lane sides.
In the mid, you see NeiruMah hanging out with Venenu quite a bit. What Thoth brings to the table is excellent safety, insane long-range damage, and of course the burst out of Final Judgment, but he certainly lacks in the early game, one of the weakest mids in the first 3 to 4 levels. And I think that's why we see NeiruMah there hanging out with him, trying to get him a little bit of additional pressure, and it's worked out thus far. Venenu is still sitting full HP, doesn't have to use any of his potions, just very, very comfortable in this mid lane.
Definitely. There's nothing better than having your Sylvanus help you out with the early game clear.
I mean, Sylvanus just brings it all to the table. It's everything you want out of an early game support, right? He can excellent wave clear, the heals, it also gives you protection. He can root enemies away or pull them as well. There's a reason we see Sylvanus selected near the top of the list in terms of what Guardians we see consistently throughout this spring split. Xenotronics this time actually has the pressure over DayToRemeber. Remember last time Xeno was playing the Artemis, really just had to hold that L in lane for quite some time. Xeno getting the better of the Hunter for now, but once DayToRemeber starts to get a few levels and level up that piercing cold, you can really start to see him clear the wave.
Once the boots come online, I'd imagine that DayToRemeber would try and play this lane out a lot more aggressively, because having the Kaldar available for Skadi, that is such incredible poke potential.
And not only that, but it's just the amount of raw damage that Skadi has, especially with the builds that most Skadi players like to go for. It's not the crit damage or really even any attack speed. It's all just raw power and penetration for Skadi players most of the time. And why do we see that more often than not?
You have to consider that Skadi's damage isn't even entirely from her ultimate, like you mentioned. The 1 does crushing amounts of damage, and the permafrost ability on her 3, not only is it excellent CC in teamfights, but on top of that, it just does so much damage.
Skeeledon in a bit of trouble. He's used every ability to try and clear those back Harpies. Mirage is going to put some good damage into him and zone him away from his own speed buff, but the heals coming through from NeiruMah. Gets Skeeledon up a little bit. Snipe hits there on a Skilly. Mirage looking to find him with that Anvil of Dawn, but he jukes it out. Instead, the focus is onto NeiruMah. The knockup is good there, but not enough to finish him off. Venenu, Final Judgment, is going to be able to find first blood. Venenu crushes Mirage on his own back Harpies.
That was a sick play by Venenu to just immediately take out Mirage, and it looks like Xeno could fall under the same fate.
Trying to get away, Xeno dashed and rooted, and nowhere for him to go. Skeeledon picks up number 2 for Oxygen Supremacy. The Challenger Cup team still on a roll here in Game 2.
And as slight as it is, losing the jungle now for Flashpoint, they're going to be losing their red buff here. The purple buff, I'm sure, is going to fall down as well. And the gold lead already at a K, about a little under 5 minutes into the game. That's kind of rough.
The idea there was good from Flashpoint, Taco. I think that the focus on a Skeeledon, Mirage saw him use all of his cooldowns on those back Harpies, and the invade timing was nice. but just the peel from NeiruMah and Skeeledon just having that juke option. Susano's so mobile in terms of assassins. Not only does he have a lot of movement abilities, but remember, his passive is that whenever his abilities are on cooldown, he gains extra movement speed on top of that.
That was an overcommit from Mirage, though. I don't think that when he saw the rotation coming through from Kiki, NeiruMah, and Venenu in that section of the jungle, he should have just backed off at that point in time, just taken away the speed buff and then looked to get out. But because he opted for the dunk down, there was so many gods available to try and help Skeeledon peel out of that area. It just wasn't necessarily the greatest decision making.
Well, Venenu, he's gone for this Doom Orb in the middle lane. He played he built pretty aggressively in game 1, going for the Bancroft's talent into the Spear of Desolation. This time, even more aggressive with this Doom Orb. Do you like this selection on the mid laner, or would you rather see him go for the more standard Dynasty Blade helm?
If he's able to get away with it, you might as well opt for the damage. Venenu obviously loves damage. We saw his build from the last game, and Aquarius taking damage.
There's the Lord of the Afterlife over the wall. Knockup wasn't quite there from Skeeledon, but Kiki gobbles him up from underneath the water. Is number 3 now on the board for Oxygen.
I'm actually pretty surprised at how much damage Pen Boot Sobek Full Charge Ultimate was able to do onto that Osiris.
It always surprises you, doesn't it? I mean, Sobek, you think, oh, he's a Guardian, he's not going to full health me here. But he can, and he does, all the time. Kiki gets that kill, and Aquarius, we said that maybe Flashpoint's trusting him to just get a lead for himself on that right-hand side. Well, we haven't seen it quite yet. He's down 200 gold right now to Kiki.
And on top of that, it just seems as though there's little gold and experience disparities all across the map for the side of Flashpoint in comparison to Oxygen Supremacy. I mean, DayToRemeber is already getting pretty far ahead, and the Skadi Snowball, that's definitely a threat.
I mean, he's almost got that Transcendence completed, where Xenotronics, he's only got the boots, and DayToRemeber wants to play aggressive in this lane, no fear out of the Hunter, who is still trying to break into the SPL. But when you lurk around the streams, you know, you see the questions, who's one of the Challenger Cup players that you think could make an impact soon in the SPL? DayToRemeber is near the top of that list.
DayToRemeber has always been a very strong mechanical hunter player, and I think that his experience that he's able to garner in the Challenger Cup really helped him as far as developing.
I mean, we saw him win the AVGL finals last season with his team, and that was, I believe he was the MVP of that competition. I think the knock on him has always been his god pool isn't big, but certainly seems to be working on that. Skeeledon working on the health pool of Shadowq, but he's going to take quite a bit of damage in return. Again, both teams do have a little bit of sustain. Incon has that Solar Blessing, and NeiruMah with the Wisps are going to be able to heal up both of their respective teammates to make sure that in case any engagement happens, they can play aggressive. But that's red buff stolen away once more by DayToRemeber.
That rotation from Xenotronics, just not really able to notice that the red buff timer was spawning. I think that Flashpoint felt as though they had enough time to pick up the wave in mid lane and then rotate into their own buff cycles, but you could tell immediately DayToRemeber was all over it.
And that's one of the things that I think really changed Skadi for a lot of players, was that she's always had excellent lane pressure. She's always been one of the best, if not the best, 1v1 character in lane. But you couldn't make those risky plays where you're invading the enemy red buff, you're invading the enemy purple buff whenever they're kind of lurking around. But just that speed boost that she gets when walking over permafrost has been enough to really bring her up, I think. Mirage thinking about going in right now, not going to find a home with that Anvil of Dawn. Stunned out Skeeledon, but has to dash away. The pull from NeiruMah not going to hit home. But Oxygen Supremacy, they're the ones who walk away with the farm from those fire elementals.
I was about to question Mirage there for a second. I thought that he was trying to look for the commit after he found the wall stun onto Skeeledon, but definitely prefer the back off there from Flashpoint. I don't think that this is a jungle engagement they want to take with Susano, Thoth, and Sylvanus being available.
And this Thoth, we talked about how poor his early game is. Well, now that he's level 9, he's got his Hieroglyphic Assault maxed out. He's in a good spot right now. He's got pen boots. He's got 50 stacks on that Doom Orb as well. Venenu's ready to brawl basically any time that Flashpoint decides to jump on top of him.
And you mentioned it just the other day when we were talking about it. Oh, speaking of which, the beads already from Xenotronics.
To get away from the slow. Aquarius can't get away from Skeeledon, though. Flashpoint still without a kill in this game, almost 10 minutes in. Oxygen just with their fourth kill, 2-0 and 2. Skeeledon has had his hand in every single one of them so far.
And that's just rough. We saw Aquarius just going absolutely nuts on this Osiris last game, and now he's actually a level behind Kiki.
So what's different from this game to game one? Why is Aquarius not having that same success?
It's the Susano. Skeeledon has just been all over the place this game, whether it's dual lane, mid lane, or solo lane. The rotations have been on point. The damage is there from Kiki with the Sickle Strike on Sobek and his 2. And I think it's just a little bit too much for Aquarius to handle at this point in time.
I mean, Skeeledon has had an unbelievable set so far. Game 1 sets the pace early on for Oxygen to allow them to come back in that mid stages with the Humbats. This time around, like you mentioned, the Susano making the difference so far for Oxygen Supremacy. And I think he was one of the bigger question marks coming into this LAN. I mean, we know he's an SPL level talent, but he didn't have the performance that he wanted to on LAN last season with Envy at the group stages. But if he can play like this throughout the Gauntlet, Oxygen may have a chance to get pretty deep into this tournament.
Skeely is certainly a talented player. I think his biggest detriment has always been he's one of those players that tends to get into his own head. He really takes it to himself if he slips up in the slightest. So I think that as long as he has Kiki and the rest of his team keep him in control, things like this can happen. And Shadowq saving himself.
He gets pop on Mirage, finds 2 with the Anvil of Dawn. Venenu with the final judgment onto Shadowq. Cleans him up. DayToRemeber sitting at 1 HP, and finally Xeno will put him down, as well as another double kill there, actually on the side of Oxygen. Kiki cleans up Incon in that middle lane. Xeno running for his life, but can't get away from Skeeledon. 3-0-4, top of the player damage charts for Skeely, and Oxygen Supremacy just rolling over Flashpoint.
And I'm sure that DayToRemeber is more than happy to make a 4-for-1 trade. They're just rolling over Flashpoint at this point in time.
Aquarius is here in full HP, but he doesn't have his ultimate. Kiki trying to zone him away from this Gold Fury. Gold Fury does go down in favor of Oxygen Supremacy. Their lead now up above 4,500 gold early on in this game. And this isn't the early game composition that Flashpoint was running last time. This is a mid to late game comp for Oxygen, and we're only 12 minutes in and they've got this kind of lead.
This is going to be incredibly rough for Flashpoint to try and battle their way back into. They're on the Portal Demon side of the map, but they can't do anything to Kiki.
He's level 13. He's already got that Breastplate of Valor, has quite a bit of HP as well with that Silver Talisman. Could be a Heartward Amulet like we saw him get last game. Could also be a Bulwark of Hope or something along those lines. Pestilence is usually picked up as well, and it would be excellent in this matchup up against the healing of Incon. A lot of options for the veteran solo laner, though he hasn't always been a solo laner. Spent a lot of time moving around, a lot of time in the mid lane, a little bit in support as well. Kiki can really do it all.
Kiki really just likes playing a little bit of everything at this point in time.
Well, he's working out in the solo lane right now as he continues to help put Aquarius down. Dunk down onto 2. NeiruMah falling low, but hits 3 with that knock-up. Aquarius and Shadowq go right back up thanks to the Typhoon. Shadowq is put down from the final judgment by Venenu, but Incon finds 2 with the Searing Pain. Aquarius, he's going to be able to escape with 1 HP, or at least try to. Kiki can't quite find him. Great ultimate there out of Incon, turns that around in favor of Flashpoint.
Incon absolutely saved that fight. Had he not been able to find the raw snipe onto Venenu and NeiruMah, that was almost certainly going to be a Portal Demon for Oxygen Supremacy, but it looks like they won it anyway.
Oh, but Xeno uses his ult early on. That Portal Demon will go down for Oxygen Supremacy, continuing to push their lead farther and farther along. Xeno had the right idea there, was just a little bit too early, but without ward coverage, it's basically impossible. It's just rolling the dice, basically.
He was just hoping for anything to save him at that point in time, and that his ultimate wouldn't be completely wasted, but unfortunately, now he doesn't have that available to him, and DayToRemeber has his ultimate available.
Look at the difference in just outright power between DayToRemeber and Xenotronics builds. I mean, you've got just tons of it for DayToRemeber. Not only that, but the penetration out of Brawler's Beatstick. There is very little power in Xeno's build. Quite a bit of attack speed, and he's got some good pen with that Ichaival. But is that enough to really trade into DayToRemeber?
It's just the goal disparity between the two hunters. I mean, DayToRemeber's had plenty of global gold between the Gold Furies, between the Portal Demons, and just being involved in team fights in general, but Xenotronics hasn't had that same pleasure. It's really difficult as a hunter to try and opt for anything more than a damage-oriented build. I like his option for Ickful here into what I expect to probably be a kin size because he just needs damage.
Well, he needs help on this left side right now. NeiruMah and DayToRemeber here. Kiki as well. Looks like he came to defend that tier 1 tower on the left, but didn't use his teleport. That'll be up in the next 35 seconds. Skeeledon also getting some farm for himself on this right-hand side. Aquarius not really enjoying that level lead that he did last time around, just now evening up with the jungler for Oxygen Supremacy.
And Skeely immediately hearing the rotation being called out and the ward coverage as well. Flashpoint just aren't able to make anything happen in that solo lane so far.
But Aquarius, he's walking right through that tower, almost pulled back in, but a well-timed ultimate gets him out of danger. Mirage, he's the one in danger, pulled back in. Great play out of NeiruMah to pull him out, but he gets popped at the wrong time. The play was there. Oxygen Supremacy played that perfectly, except they couldn't wait. They couldn't hold it for the last second. But Skeeledon says, come on back, boy. I still got that kill. Skeely with number 5 so far in this game. Mirage was saved for a moment, but not long enough.
Mirage feeling it a little bit too much after that one. I mean, I do imagine he was just trying to collect his speed buff and get out as soon as possible, but when there's a Susano on the map, there's no such thing as real escape.
Yeah, exactly. He's just got too much mobility to get away from in basically any scenario. Tier 2 tower, 1,500 gold goes the way of Oxygen Supremacy with no response whatsoever from Flashpoint, who just look beaten at this stage. I mean, they just have not had really any fight back. The only real play that we've seen them make so far this game, Taco, was that excellent snipe out of Incon.
I think the primary issue here is that Skeeledon just came online so soon with the Susano. I mean, 5-0-5, been a part of nearly every single kill on the side of Oxygen Supremacy. And on top of that, a 4-level lead over Mirage.
He's just been aggressive all game long, and it isn't just this one, it was with Hunbats as well, and you don't expect Hunbats to be the aggressive assassin usually, but Skeeledon played it to his own style and looked excellent doing it. And if he continues to play this aggressive, and if Oxygen Supremacy can move on to face Noble, it's going to be an interesting matchup up against probably the most aggressive jungler in the league, El Chapo, for Team Noble. But Oxygen, they can't worry about that matchup yet. They got to handle what's in front of them. Flashpoint are down, but certainly not out. They've got a lot of sustain and can certainly, if they're able to find a team fight win, could use that sustain out of Incon to try and siege down and grab some extra gold for themselves.
Nearly a 10k gold difference, though, between these two teams. That's rough. It doesn't matter what your lineup is. This is incredibly difficult for Flashpoint to find their way back into.
Mirage is on the right side again. Gold Fury pulled, but Xenotronics is really just helping Oxygen out with doing some extra DPS. There goes the Gold Fury. Oxygen secure number 2 for themselves in this game. And what was nearly 10,000 is now over 10,000. We're just before 18 minutes, and Oxygen Supremacy are looking to move on to face Noble Esports in the next round.
It's kind of that stage in time where you don't want to see Oxygen turn on the autopilot just yet. Mirage going to try and gank Sobek, but I just don't think there's much he can do to a level 17 KikiSoCheeky.
Yeah, he's 5 levels down, and there's just no chance for a kill potential there whatsoever, especially with just the raw amount of HP that Kiki has, thanks to the levels and that Pestilence. The rest of Oxygen Supremacy, they're not as worried about it. Skeeledon dashes forward and finds the pull back. Typhoon not going to set up for Venenu there, but it might have created enough space to grab this tier 2 tower. It will not. So that's a small win for Flashpoint. Couple ultimates down, and their tier 2 tower still standing.
Very solid amount of poke onto that T2 tower, though, from Oxygen. And now for Flashpoint, their main concern is if Oxygen are full health and decide to commit on that side of the map, they're not going to have a whole lot of defense coming out from their T2 tower.
But Gold Fury is down, and Flashpoint, they want to take something away from Oxygen, but there's just nothing to take. Red buff's already gone. Gold Fury, Oracles, all down. So instead, they're going to turn their attention to this middle lane, put some use to that sustain out of Incon. This tier 1 tower looks likely to fall, and it will. 500 gold are the way of Flashpoint. But with the rest of Oxygen returning from base, Flashpoint has to turn away and run.
Flashpoint need time right now. That'll be the biggest factor for helping them get back into this game, I'm just not sure that Oxygen are going to permit them to have it.
They've just been playing so aggressive all game long. Oxygen definitely keeping their foot on the gas pedal so far. Kiki looking to flick someone back into the team. Mirage doesn't quite seal it away. A great ultimate out of Incon puts Skeeledon down to 1 HP, but Xeno doesn't quite have the range to finish him off. Venenu the focus here from Aquarius, but he doesn't have that same level he did last time. Meanwhile, DayToRemeber is handling every other member of Flashpoint by that portal demon. Xeno wants to make him pay, but turns around and takes a ton of damage. The stun through the wall sets up the kill for Kiki. Skeeledon pops through that portal demon and finds some damage onto Aquarius, who now has to try and retreat.
And I'm not sure that Aquarius is going to be able to get out, and the answer is no. Venenu, absolutely on point today with this Thoth.
5, 1, and 4 for the middle laner. The rest of Oxygen going to take a page out of Skeely's book, back and use that portal to get back in position to try and knock down this fire giant. 2 members dead here for Flashpoint. Incon does have that Searing Pain up soon, but look at the positioning of Kiki and DayToRemeber. They're not even on the objective. They're trying to snag those kills. Shadowq has just been eaten alive time and time again by Caldier.
They're not going to let Incon have even the slightest chance of coming into this. You can see he's already looping around, seeing if he can make it in time. Mirage trying to buy him enough moments to see if he can sneak a raw ult over the wall, but he's just going to take a spill for it instead.
Mirage is the one who needs the time. Incon trying to get in there and try and steal away the objective, but Skeeledon picks up his second kill there in that engagement, number 7 in total for the jungler, whose name has been on our lips all set long thus far. Oxygen Supremacy now with the Fire Giant, knocking down one of the last tier 2s standing on the map.
Normally, I wouldn't have liked that commitment by Flashpoint to try and find their way into the Fire Giant, but when you're this far behind, it's really your only option.
And they're running out of those options, like you mentioned, Taco. Phoenix falling pretty low. Skeeledon teleports into the backside, force use purification beads to get out of the abduct from Shadowq. Final Judgment cleans up Xenotronics. Shadowq makes number 2 in this one for Venenu, who's got 7, matching his jungler now. The mid-jungle combination for Oxygen Supremacy looking dominant up against Flashpoint.
And these Phoenixes not looking too healthy. This one's already pushed out 3/4 health, about to be 0 health if Oxygen can keep this up, and the pressure is on.
Mirage, he's gonna fall to Venenu from a distance. The pull back in, Incon force use his purification beads. Middle Phoenix does fall. Left side still has that tier 2 tower to worry about, that pesky little 1 HP tower that Oxygen just couldn't quite snag earlier.
But it doesn't even matter. That 1 HP is 0 HP in no time. And now, what could potentially be the final push and Flashpoint's hopes being wiped away.
Shadowq pulled in and almost put down, with the Scarab's Blessing is enough to save his life for just a moment until Venenu cleans him up one more time. Oxygen Supremacy was in the lead from minute 1 in this game. Looks like they want to end it right now. They're waiting for their minions on that right-hand side, but look at how healthy they all are. No one really low whatsoever.
Between a Fire Giant and a Sylvanus, they have absolutely nothing to worry about. Opting to back off, though. They're just playing it safe. They probably don't even have to, but I like their discipline here.
A lot of players who haven't been to LAN before. NeiruMah, DayToRemeber played on LAN at the AVGL finals, but and as well for Challenger Cup, I believe, but not here in this SPL sort of environment. NeiruMah, I believe, playing at his first LAN, so you got to respect the safe call in these sort of scenarios. A lot can go wrong, but even despite that, the lead is enormous right now for Oxygen Supremacy.
With a 20k gold lead, I don't think that Oxygen Supremacy are worried about giving Flashpoint a couple of extra minutes. They can afford to wait for the Fire Giant to respawn if they want to.
I mean, they've still got about a minute left on this Fire Giant, a little bit over a minute at this stage. Gold Fury, this is basically just Oxygen doing something with their time, because without rituals in the game, basically everyone is going to be full build and have potions pretty soon, but if it's on the way, you might as well take it, I suppose. NeiruMah may as well take that. Xenotronics actually finds Skeeledon on that right-hand side. Look at where Flashpoint all was, the grouping on that right. Love that play out of the veterans from Flashpoint, and that might be enough to save their Titan for the time being.
That's actually going to buy Flashpoint just those few extra minutes. Skeeledon, I don't think, was anticipating encountering the entire roster of Flashpoint in that jungle.
You talked about going on autopilot earlier. I think we were all kind of on autopilot there. We were just watching the Gold Fury. Oxygen, they weren't really worried about it, but Flashpoint weren't. They were the ones looking for the pick, and it does pay off. Oxygen Supremacy are going to have to wait around for about a minute and a half to snag away this Fire Giant once more.
I doubt, again, though, that they mind too much. I mean, it's not ideal. You could tell that they really wanted to just go ahead, end it, find their way back into the rest of the competing games for this weekend. But like you mentioned, the wait is on now.
I mean, it's just kind of the clock is ticking. The sands in the hourglass are ticking down. Flashpoint trying to stop that tick and maybe turn their fortunes around, but Kiki trying to turn it around onto the 4 members of Flashpoint that aggress onto him. Mirage barely able to get up into the sky. Just level 14 at the 25-minute mark. The jungler for Flashpoint has had a tough game this time around on this Thor.
And it's going to only get worse considering that all of Oxygen Supremacy are pretty much going to be full build at this stage in time. I think Venenu is really the only one trailing behind because supports, once they hit level 16, 15, they're basically level 20 at that stage.
That's as high as they get. They should just be happy that they get that high in the game. I think you're right. And Venenu doesn't have full build, isn't quite level 20, but he's got a lot of very expensive items. Spear of Desolation gives him the pen and the cooldown reduction. The Rod of Tahuti, of course, and then that Soul Reaver trying to really one-shot one of the members of Flashpoint. Right side Phoenix respawns and immediately falls back down to the pressure from Oxygen, who are looking to do the exact same to this middle Phoenix. Mirage just barely able to get out of the clutches of NeiruMah, but it does cost Shadowq his Scarab's Blessing.
I like this option by Oxygen as well, to take away the Phoenixes first, just to ensure that Flashpoint aren't going to try and contest, because now if Flashpoint look for that contest, more likely than not, they're going to end up dying for it instead. Yeah,
just so much pressure on these right and mid sides. I mean, you've got plenty of fire minions coming down. Left side Phoenix will respawn, but I don't think that Oxygen is too worried about that. Fire Giant, the second one of the game, falls down to the hands of Oxygen Supremacy.
And this could potentially be it for Incon and the rest of Flashpoint.
The spring split looking pretty dim right now for Flashpoint. Had a couple bright spots, found the 2-0 over Noble, had the split against Allegiance, but certainly not the showing they wanted here at the spring Gauntlet land. Skeeledon cleans up Mirage, his 7th death of the game. Skeeledon, for how good he's looked, Mirage has not had that same pressure. Snipe from Incon, not going to do any significant damage. DayToRemeber still fairly healthy. Skeeledon looking to finish off Shadowq instead of the Titan. There's the ultimate out of Venenu, one-shot Zeno, almost does the same to Incon, but it's all just fun and games before the Titan falls. Oxygen Supremacy, they're the ones moving on to face Noble Esports.
Thoth. That is the only thing that comes to mind right now is Thoth.
He does a lot of damage in the late game. If you weren't aware, newsflash, Thoth hurts whenever he gets Rod of Tahuti, has a Fire Giant and the Soul Reaver as well. And Thoth is one of those gods that he was banned a lot during the split, but really not picked if he wasn't banned. Venenu showing why he deserves to be picked in this sort of scenario. The Challenger Cup uprising here, taking down Flashpoint in the first game.
Well, no doubts about it either. Venenu can certainly play Thoth. The stun setup was phenomenal. The ultimates were absolutely on point. It's just all around excellent display from this Challenger, now SPL level team.
And don't forget, this isn't a bunch of no-name players who are just kind of coming up and beating these SPL level players. These are guys that have been around the scene for a long time, coupled with some new blood, some new talent that is ready to burst into the scene. Really exciting to see what Oxygen can do up against Noble and maybe even beyond. Who knows? That's the beauty of the Gauntlet. Let's take a look at the beauty of Game 2, and we've got a desk ready to do just that. Tom, can you do it for us?
I think I can, especially with my 2 solo lane friends right here. Very fantastic stuff. Toli, I want you to focus on whatever you want, actually. What was your key for game number 2?
It was a different start, I would say, coming out of Oxygen. They also had a great start because the fact that they put Skeeledon in that duo lane, and on top of that, they invaded the purple buff by himself. He just walked into 2 members, stealing that away, and then he took this little bit of the lead, and then he tried to shut down Aquarius on the Osiris. And that, like, he got those 2 kills really early on. Shutting down the Osiris that early really hurts him because whenever you pick an Osiris, you don't necessarily, you want to be able to snowball. If you don't snowball, fine, just don't get behind. But an Osiris that does fall behind, you're just utterly useless at that point.
Basically useless, yeah. I like the Sobek a lot coming out from Kiki. He's making more of the pick where he kind of gets behind. Thankfully to the gank though, he was actually ahead in that matchup and he could do so much. It was so good.
And it was basically because of Skeeledon's pressure on every lane of the map.
Okay, good. I'm taking it away from y'all solo laners. Skeeledon, the jungle. He's the one that made this one happen. We've been talking about Skeeledon for a long time. Even going back to when Adonis was here on the desk, he loved to talk about how strong of a player Skeeledon was. But at the end of the day, we just didn't see it when Skeely came up and played in the SPL. This right here, folks, this right here, this is the Skeely we've been talking about.
Absolutely. At level 17, at the 18-minute mark, he was able to rack up a 10,000 goal lead for his team, whereas Mirage was struggling 5 levels behind. That's not something you want to be as a Thor.
So also this play right here, Mirage coming back into the speed buff, kind of a greedy play and gets punished immediately.
Right here, well, much earlier. This is 16 minutes in. Dimmy, I quoted you. I don't know if you knew you were on the record. 6 minutes and 30 seconds in. Oxygen had 3 kills and Flashpoint had none. Skeeledon had just ganked over there in the solo and you said, you know, I'm not sure, but I'm pretty sure that's game over.
That's when the game is over.
Why was that gank from Skeely so important?
Basically, from what we had in the first game, Aquarius is the somewhat carry of Flashpoint, and they shut him out completely. Early kill on Osiris, he's out of the game. He's not going to be able to do what he wanted to do. And you get the Sobek ahead, you have 3 kills, it's game over in my books.
Yeah, it worked out really well. Skeeledon, like I said, finally really coming up and stepping up and showing what the Sleep is actually going to be able to bring to the table. This is very, very exciting if you're a fan of these guys. I think heading into their next opposition, Noble, it'll be very important. Noble really leans on that right side of the map, the jungle solo synergy with Uzi and Chapo specifically. So it's going to be very important for Skeeledon to continue this reign of terror that we saw here. And Skeeledon was able to help out his mid laner Venenu and the rest of his team topple the opposition. Standing by, Flashpoint's very own Incon is there to talk about the match.
Indeed he is. Thank you so much, After on the analyst deck. Incon, commiserations today, first of all. Tough set there up against Oxygen. Obviously, did you expect them to come out as well as they did?
Well, we had heard a lot of stuff about Oxygen. Obviously, we put almost all of our practice time into focusing on their kind of picks and bans because Zap has been talking them up on Twitter, and they definitely showed up.
So let's go through game 1 first of all. It looked like your composition was all around early game focus with an Artemis for the late game. Was that the case? Was that the sort of picks and ban focus you were after there?
Yeah, so we had, the pressure with the Poseidon and Sylvanus, stuff like this, so we could get a lot of the lane pressure. That way we could have our Artemis kind of get to the late game, but they did a really good job focusing Xeno in the early game, so we couldn't quite snowball where we needed them to.
Now, even though Aquarius over in the dual lane for you guys on Osiris, game 1, he was fantastic. He got off to a great start. Just wasn't enough. What actually ended up happening in that game? Was it just the focus onto Xeno that caused the issue? Well,
I mean, Xeno got focused early, and they had a really good job having Kiki zone everybody out, even though Kiki wasn't really doing as much damage as Aquarius. I think he did like 10k more damage Aquarius did, but he did a very good job either running straight at Xeno or running straight at me, so I didn't want to really crack at him. But like at one point we killed him, but like that's the kind of we crack into a mana. So it's like it's not the best case scenario, so they kind of put us into a bit of a pickle.
And then game 2, it just looked like right from the offset they were ahead from the beginning and they just strangled you out. It felt like more than anything else.
Yeah, so we went for the early gank in the second game. It was one of the strats we were working on, but they definitely either heard us say we were going to gank them, or they just had, the wards out, whatever it may be. But so we got a little bit behind off of that, and then with Season 4, if you get down a couple K early, that's like super crazy hard to come back.
So you guys going out now, obviously you get to watch the rest of the weekend. Looking at over at North America, who do you think is going to take the gauntlet here now?
Well, I mean, obviously the easy pick is going to be E-United since they only have to win 1 set in order to do it. But I don't think you can ever count out in memory of Gabe and Soar. Both of those, I mean, those are the top 3 picks. It's not that crazy, but they are the top 3 because they played so well during the season, and I'd say it'd be a pretty safe bet for one of those 3.
Well, the last guessing game I'm going to play with you is Oxygen versus Noble is going to be the next matchup. On paper, how do you feel about that one?
Both of those teams going to be pretty close. I mean, obviously, MLC is going to do top damage. We know that's going to happen. But between them, it's going to be close. It's going to come down to whether or not MLC does pop up as much as they need him to with like a big coconut or something that he's known for.
Sure. So overall, disappointing performance for you guys. Obviously, next season, you're still going to have to do relegations, first of all, and you may have to face Oxygen there as well. Are we going to see any, like, working progress based off what we saw today?
Yeah, of course. I think that honestly, people expected us just to get pretty stomped, and I think that game 1 was fairly close, and so we did pretty well there. And I think I hit more ultimates in these games than I did all season long, so that's pretty solid as well, so I'm happy with the personal performance.
It's a step up. Any shouts you want to give before we let you go?
Yeah, of course. Shout out to Flashpoint. Thank you guys to all of our fans, and I'll be back home streaming pretty soon.
Thanks so much. That's Incon from Flashpoint. Commiserations to them, but it's on to the next set, and the analysts are standing by to bring you that one.